welcome to episode 104 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is August 4th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, in recent episodes, we often talked about integration of SAP services into Microsoft Teams. We talked about the out-of-the-box applications that are available on the Teams App Store. We also talked about custom developments, like the one with Martin Frick from some time ago, where he talked about how to create a Teams integration into, or a SuccessFactors integration into Teams, and where he had a long blog post series around this. Today, we have Uma from SAP joining us, who will show us the integration of adaptive cards into Teams, leveraging SAP Event Mesh. But before we hand over to her, and she will show us some slides and demos on this topic, let me actually take a look at some of the news from this week. And actually, we had some of these topics now on our backlog for quite some time. But we never got to these blog posts from the tech community, and now we want to revisit them. So the first one is a blog post from Jitendra about optimizing your SAP environment. Goran, I think you also worked on this, or at least you are involved in this.
Help this. Yeah, exactly. So it's an assessment from SAP on Azure from Jitendra. We had the privilege that he is also our guest. So he wrote a nice blog, and also if you can also a bit scroll down, talk what it's all about, exactly what we are trying to achieve. Here, what does it mean? Well, architecture framework. And basically he went through it, how to enable the whole stuff, in a kind of easy step-by-step approach. Very nice, very easy. In the SAP context, it's always something complicated. So when we have something easy, it's nice.
And right. Remember, we had him, as you said, on the show again, or we had him already on the show where he introduced the first steps around this. I think, So now we have a nice blog post on this.
And also, 2 weeks ago, as you mentioned, very visible and successful session on Azure monitoring for SAP, but we haven't mentioned actually the other blogs, right?
Yeah.
The other blogs. Harsha Sridharan actually wrote a few of them, going into deep dive into each of those kind of sessions. So in this one, it's the metrics actually, how it's going. If you just can go a bit down to see it, what kind of metric, how do they look like? Exactly, as an end result. We did example.
Sorry, I think a lot of these topics were also the ones that Sammy showed to us in our episode, but these blog posts basically go into much more details.
Exactly. So there are 2 other blogs about how to configure it, right? Going deep dive. So here he, for example, explain in detail what kind of interfaces from SAP use, from subcontrol, from ABAP as well, the RFC, and how to enable. I mean, for me, it worked. It really helped. It's helpful. It's not too difficult, but actually, if you don't have deep dive explanation, it's a bit tough. And he did a really nice job. So explain the architecture and explain how to do it.
Fantastic.
Right? Yeah. And so definitely for the
Sorry, go ahead.
Will be very helpful for the community. I mean, just to onboard them, right?
And Klaas created a similar blog post, now all obviously here in the context of our Azure monitoring for SAP solution. Klaas for Microsoft SQL Server monitoring.
Correct, which was basically there in the first version, but here I think it's more enhanced for SQL Server. And he also worked on the Db2 as well as it's basically a new provider. So customer were asking for, and he did it kind of similar here. And he in detail explained how to do what he's monitoring, gives some examples of typical stuff they are kind of would be helpful to end customers running the DB2. So great progress there, right? Yeah.
And then there's one
that
more.
Is the first one, exactly. That is, yeah. That
for
is the
the
first
SOAP and
blog.
RCD5 integration.
Correct.
Cool. So I think as a follow-up, and I think, yeah, we had a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners for the Azure monitoring episode. So now if you want to get more, repeat the steps that Sammy talked about and really implement this in your own environment, then these blog posts here on the tech community can definitely be helpful. Cool. Good. Then moving on, we have another known guest on our podcast. So Joav Danieli created or wrote this blog post about Azure Sentinel for SAP systems and the GA that this solution is now generally available. So customers can now use this to connect to their SAP system. So, or sorry, not Azure, Microsoft Sentinel. Very much like what he and the team talked about in a previous episode. At that time, it was not yet GA, but now it is. And with this new capabilities, yeah, you can now install it. There's even a 6-month, it's not a trial called, it's a promotion offering. So now that is GA. So if you got excited when we first talked about this and you now want to use it really in a productive environment, being GA, then yeah, now is the time to take a look at this and really configure Microsoft Sentinel for Azure. Moving on, I found another blog post just the other day from Andreas Forster from SAP, and he talked about SAP Data Warehouse Cloud. I mean, obviously, we have already talked about Azure Data Factory, we talked about Power BI, but as we all know, SAP also has the data intelligence solution. They have the SAP Data Warehouse Cloud. They have SAP Analytics Cloud for the data visualization. And Andreas in this blog post outlines how you can use Data Warehouse Cloud together with Azure Machine Learning. That's actually a pretty interesting blog post. It's quite detailed, so he really outlines the steps that you need to go through to enable Azure Machine Learning, and then how you connect actually Azure Machine Learning, and then how you can visualize or get the results also in SAP Analytics Cloud. And all of this is done live without any data replication. So it's a really, I thought it was a really nice use case. So if you are using the SAP Data Warehouse Cloud, if you're interested in SAP Analytics Cloud, then you can now also infuse here Azure Machine Learning functionalities to get your predictions into SAP Analytics Cloud. The next topic is something from our Martin Pankratz. So again, he's addressing a very, very important topic, I think. So this goes in the same direction of our Teams integration. We have a lot of customers that have an existing Fiori Launchpad, that have existing Fiori apps that are consolidated in a Fiori Launchpad. And now they're asking also, can I get this into Teams? And if you are not using the Fiori Launchpad on BTP, for example, where actually Martin already talked about this before. But if you're really running this in a self-hosted environment, so really on your ABAP stack, for example, then there are a few challenges with cross-site forgery protections and other things where the iframe injections into Teams are a little complicated. And Martin outlines the steps that you need to do to make this happen. And basically, some of the things are just adding new, like in this specific case here, for example, the login provider, a custom login provider, and with this getting the information into Teams. But then also, unfortunately, doing some modifications, required modifications on the SAP side to really have a full-fledged integration of your SAP Fiori Launchpad, of your self-hosted SAP Fiori Launchpad into Teams. So if you are interested in doing this, then just follow the steps by Martin. Again, there is this caveat that you need to do some breaking changes. So with the next upgrade of your SAP system, you need to make sure that you do these changes again. But in this article, he really outlines in a beautiful way how you can get your SAP Fiori Launchpad into Teams. So speaking of Teams, PDN, a colleague of Uma, also published another blog post on the Teams integration. This is a project that is done together with Accenture and SAP. So here he outlines, I guess in a similar way to what we'll soon hear from Uma, how you can actually get your SAP data via an adaptive card into Teams. It's a beautiful article that really shows a high-level architecture, like how you would do this if you have your SAP system, if you're using Event Mesh, and then you can use the Azure Bot services to get the information into Teams. But actually, I don't want to talk too much about this because we have the expert with us, Uma. Can you quickly introduce yourself and then show us what you have prepared?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Uma Anbazhagan. I'm cloud architect working in SAP in the SAP BTP platform adoption and advisory unit. So let me quickly share my desktop. There are a couple of slides we would want to go through with you today.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of this podcast and to talk about creating collaborative, interoperable architecture solutions to extend SAP business processes and workflows into Azure ecosystem. So let's see what we have today. We will quickly start with how can we create such applications, and importantly, how can we position this with the customers. We'll briefly take a use case. We will see the technical architecture, how can it be developed, and then we will go through a demo and also a couple of resources which talks about in detail and know-how and how to develop these kind of solutions. Now, when we talk about interoperable architecture, we can talk about it from a security perspective, integration, building business applications, data and analytics, AI, ML, in different aspects. Now, here specifically, when we talk about business process extension, we have seen the transition from a graphical user interface to a conversational user interface. And I'm sure that you agree that there is a percentage of correlation between the technology change for the user interface to the expectation from the users. Now, keeping this as a point, we will see how we can build applications where we can integrate the Microsoft productivity suite of applications like the MS Teams and the Outlook, and we can seamlessly integrate with the SAP cloud applications, S/4HANA, business processes, or processes from the SAP SuccessFactors. Now, for this kind of a seamless integration, we are here leveraging SAP Business Technology Platform and some of the services from Microsoft Azure. Now let's take a very simple scenario. The scenario here is to perform a purchase requisition approval via Microsoft Teams. The purchase requisition is created in SAP S/4HANA, and for the approval process, it lands in Microsoft Teams as the user interface. So here, basically, the key point is how we are leveraging best of both of the platforms to create these kind of applications. Now here, this is a simple business process. We are taking two personas here. One is the requester and the other is the approver. So if I am the requester who's logging into the SAP S/4HANA system to create a purchase requisition, these events are sent to SAP Event Mesh, which is on the BTP platform. These events are received and are sent as notifications to MS Teams. So let us take here, if Holger is the approver in MS Teams, he will be receiving these notifications and he can approve and reject the purchase requisition. And any changes that are happening to this business object in MS Teams is seamlessly updated back into the S/4HANA system. Now, if we deep dive a little bit into the technical architecture, let us start from extreme left to right. On the left side, we have the Microsoft Azure and the MS Teams. Within Microsoft Azure, we are leveraging the Azure AD, which is for managing the users. And then we have the enterprise application. We have the bot service, an instance of bot service, which is used to integrate with the MS Teams. And then we have the blob storage in case we want to store specific conversations on the MS Teams if we want to persist it. And then we have the SAP Business Technology Platform. So this is where the extension application, a Node.js extension application, which is running on Cloud Foundry runtime, is developed and deployed. We are leveraging the SAP Event Mesh. This is exclusively for receiving events from SAP S/4HANA. And from a connectivity perspective, in case of a scenario where we are having both SAP BTP as well as S/4HANA running on Azure and in two different VNets, we can very easily, seamlessly connect both of these leveraging the private link, leveraging the SAP private link service as well as the Azure private link. And from a security perspective, we have leveraged the Access UAA to establish the principal propagation of users right from Microsoft Azure to SAP BTP and to SAP S/4HANA. So this is at a high
question,
level.
Uma.
Yes.
You're showing here basically everything is in Azure, and architecture, meaning the SAP system is also in Azure, but also SAP system could be in on-premises environment.
Yes.
Right. So meaning the only difference would be that you would, for the connectivity to the BTP, I guess you would use the cloud connector.
Yes, in case of S/4HANA on-premise, we will be leveraging the SAP connectivity service on BTP and the cloud connector.
Yeah, and if it's an Azure, why not the private endpoint, which reached the GA relatively recently? So you use the benefits there, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Let's take a look at the.
Sorry, can I also quickly interrupt you, Uma? Because I think if you go back to this technical architecture picture, what I really love there is how you've combined a lot of technologies, a lot of tools that we talked about in the past already in the integration in the beautiful end-to-end story. So obviously, I mean, there's the business technology platform, which is the integration layer between these two worlds. But then on the business technology platform, as Goran just said, you're using private link to connect to your SAP system that is running on Azure. So really without the need to open up any external IP addresses or some external ports and stuff like that. So we can really use the private link service, as Goran said, which is now GA. Then you're using the event mesh, which I found really, really interesting because you're really adopting this event-driven architecture approach. So you don't have a pulling mechanisms that ask every time, is there a new event? Is there something new? But you're really leveraging the out-of-the-box events on the SAP side using event mesh to then publish this information into the other world, into the Azure Bot service on the Azure side, which then integrates into Teams, which provides the end user with a nice user experience. And I think it's also important to highlight that this is just an additional user interface channel. So obviously it still is possible that the user logs onto an SAP Fiori user interface and then interacts with the SAP and approves this purchase requisition, for example. But now with this approach, you are opening up a new user interface channel basically for the user to work with SAP data. So and obviously you also have single sign-on. So you also have the Azure Active Directory integration. So really check all the interesting cool stuffs, the technologies that we have on the Microsoft and on the SAP side. You put this all together and created a really nice scenario here. And now you need to unmute again.
Yeah. So let's take a look at a quick demo. So I have our S/4HANA Fiori application here. So this is where I have logged in and I will be creating a purchase requisition. So to quickly create it, I'm going to take an existing purchase requisition and I'm creating a PR for iron casting products. And this request is going to land in MS Teams for approval.
So we can see there was quantity like 3 or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, quantity 3 and the purchase requisition 562. So when I log into Microsoft Teams, so I received the purchase requisition
Already
here.
there. Yeah.
Yes. So there is this application that we have to add in the MS Teams. So the number of applications that we are trying to create, we will be able to add it in MS Teams, and it will come as a notification to us. And from here, I can go ahead and approve this particular purchase requisition. And once it is approved, we can go back into our S/4HANA and we can quickly take a look and see whether this status has got approved from the MS Teams.
And I think, I mean, you switched over to Teams and then the notification was already there. Obviously, if we would have been in Teams, then we would have seen the pop-up. There is a new notification. So if I'm the end user, maybe chatting currently with Goran, then I would get this notification. Look, there's a new purchase requisition. I would see all the relevant information and I could click on approve directly from Teams. And what we can see now here in our Fiori screen, the purchase requisition is now also approved here.
Approved, yes. So this is just one simple scenario, basically to show the connectivity and the technical capabilities. These kind of applications can be developed for many scenarios. It can be for a internal, external collaboration. It can be that I want to see certain reports and then I have to go in and approve. I want to extract a lot of other information like getting details of a particular PR before I approve. So all of these additions are something that can be very easily developed, keeping this as a base technical architecture.
And I think that's really fascinating. So we have now the architecture, the blueprint basically. But in the end, whether this is a purchase requisition or if this is a leave request or a purchase order or whatever, the underlying architecture is still the same. So how would I do this? Or I don't want to break your flow. Just let's continue.
So this is a part of the demo, and then probably I quickly wanted to show you the blog post, in which we are very detailedly documenting the simple business scenario, which we talked about right now. And then from a solution architecture perspective, there are two scenarios that we are covering. One, when we are having S/4HANA on-premise, this is where we will be leveraging the connectivity service and the cloud connector. And the second scenario, primarily for RISE with SAP customers, where we have SAP S/4HANA on Azure. This is where we would recommend to leverage the private link service. Now, along with this blog post, we also have the GitHub repo, which is available in SAP samples. Here you can take a look at the detailed tutorial and the documentation, step-by-step documentation, which talks about what needs to be configured in BTP, what are the configurations required in Azure, what are the setup that is required in an SAP S/4HANA system, how do we set up the principal propagation in case of private link as well as in case of the SAP connectivity service. There is a code base which you can directly take, just deploy it and configure, and then you can test the application. So this is going to give you a know-how and a very quick way to get started with such kind of integrations.
And actually, I spent some time and looked at the GitHub repository, and it's a extremely detailed tutorial, right? I mean, you have lots of screenshots. You really guide the user step by step. What do I need to do to configure my BTP environment? What are the, as you said, code snippets that I need to copy and paste, ideally directly from GitHub. So it's a really detailed setup. So I think, if you want to do this with any other business object where you have the events, where you can enable the events on the S4 system, then you just need to follow your GitHub tutorial and then you can get it working.
Yes, yes. So that's all I had from my set, Holger, for today for the presentation and the demo. Apart from this, there are our contacts that are mentioned and the links that are available, which people can go through and try to do the implementation.
Fantastic, Uma. So again, we'll put all the links also in the show notes. Especially for me, one of the highlights are really the GitHub repository. I mean, obviously also your blog post that talks about this scenario, but it's really anyone can give it a try. The GitHub repo really guides you step by step through all the required things that you need to do to set up this integration. And it's really something that you can use in production. So you're also talking about, as mentioned, principal propagation, the single sign-on flow and stuff like that. So it's definitely worth to take a look at that. Great, then yeah, I think thank you so much, Uma. I think it was really great to have you. Thank you very much for the slides and also the demo. I think that hopefully got a lot of listeners and viewers inspired to try it out by themselves. And I hope to see you sometimes again on the podcast here.
Yeah. Thank you, Holger. Thank you, Karan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.